price of freedom is always high. No one can foresee precisely what course it will take. One path we shall never choose, and that is the path of surrender.
You ready for this?
Let's find out.
When they rang up and said, "Are you interested in doing First Class?" I thought it was a joke. I thought my agents were sort of just winding me up. And then I met with Emma Watts at Fox, and she said that we're serious, but we saw Kick-Ass and was blown away by it, and we feel X-Men needs to be reinvented. It was unfinished business, because I came so close to directing X3. I mean, I literally storyboarded the whole film. And ironically, I pulled out of it because I didn't think there was enough time to make the movie, and we had so much more time on that than we did on this film.
Are you gonna ask us to think of a number between 1 and 10 now?
No, Agent Striker, although I could ask you about the Jupiter missiles America are currently placing in Turkey.
You brought a damn spy into this facility.
How's that for a magic trick?
Best I've ever seen.
There was a script that was based on a brilliant original idea by Bryan Singer that was there, that was the one that Matthew had seen and had a look at. And I think he immediately had in his head tons of ideas about where he wanted to take the story, whilst keeping that brilliant central concept of it being set in the 60s and with the political backdrop of the time, and focusing on the relationship between Professor X and Magneto.
And the catalyst between them was, for me, was Raven, Mystique, you know. So for me, it was the threesome of that, really.
In terms of the decisions that she has to make, she's the one we can relate to, as she's presented with these two diverging views of the future of, you know, what it means to be different in that society.
If you're using half your concentration to look normal, then you're only half paying attention to whatever else you're doing. Just pointing out something that could save your life. You want society to accept you, but you can't even accept yourself.
Ironically, I know everyone goes on about Wolverine and all these characters they love, but I always found McKellen and Patrick Stewart really interesting when they went head-to-head in the other movies, and so I was glad that Bryan Singer had the idea of making the prequel about those two.
When I read the first 40 pages of the script after I was offered the part, that was all that existed. They hadn't written the rest yet. I saw a little bit of a hook where the character seemed like he was going in a different direction from the old Professor Charles Xavier that we've seen before. You know, he was in a pub, he was having a drink, and he was chatting someone up. And that was it, really. I thought maybe we should take that and run with that, and Matthew and Jane were both very much in agreement.
What Matthew was very clear about, and Jane from the beginning, is that you know, it was a character piece, and it was a study of characters and their relationships between one another, and the sort of action pieces would come to sort of complement that rather than the opposite way around.
It's the first opportunity that's come to me to be in a comic book movie. I was so thrilled that, first off, the script was fantastic, and that my part was really kind of interesting and complex, and also that Matthew Vaughn was directing it, because I was a very big fan of his films, and you know, he was on the list of people that I was hoping to get a chance to work with.
My name is Sebastian Shaw, and I am not here to hurt you. Friends, there's a revolution coming when mankind discovers who we are, what we can do. Each of us will face a choice: be enslaved or rise up to rule. Choose freely, but know that if you are not with us, then by definition you are against us.
What's so cool is that Matthew cast a bunch of, you know, actors and not a bunch of action stars, you know, and because of that, and because of Matthew's want to make an actual dramatic film, you know, we spent a lot of time talking about character, making sure everything made sense, and he wasn't just looking for opportunities to blow things up.
Poor James, I think I drove him nuts, because I made him read with all these, you know, and he wasn't used to coming in and reading. I was using him literally like a out-of-work actor, and I explained to him, I said, look, if we're doing Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid type of relationship here, I have to see it now. You know, I tested them together, and it took me 3 seconds. As soon as they did the first scene, I knew I'd found my Magneto and X.
This idea of a relationship being in some ways the core to the film. And if the relationship didn't work out, then you had, well, I had the feeling, and James definitely as well, that perhaps the whole story would disintegrate. So we did a lot of work on the scenes between each other, the development of the relationship between each other from the first moment where they meet to the resultant, you know, at the end of the film where the relationship actually fractures.
Killing will not bring you peace. Peace was never an option. We kind of made sure we were on each other's side and backed each other up and became a little bit of a double act in terms of not making it us and them, do you know what I mean? But, you know, if ever you were feeling compromised or you were feeling you're being pushed in a certain direction that you didn't want to go, we'd back each other up and make sure that that didn't happen.
If you put Kevin Bacon, Fassbender and McAvoy in a movie, you're going to have to give them something to get their teeth on, you know, get to chomp on, because they've got big acting muscles, all of them. And I think X-Men have been quite smart, because even in the previous ones, they've had McKellen and they've had great actors always, because it's a very, it's an unbelievable situation. But if you fill it with class actors, then you kind of believe it more.
You know, I'm obsessed with superhero films, and Kick-Ass was me going, okay, I'm now going to go over the top and have a lot of fun. But this film, I think, look at the whole Cuban Missile Crisis, and I love movies from the 60s and 70s as well. They're big influence on me.
There's a war coming, John.
Yes. But a war with who?
Excellent question. Though I wouldn't call it a war exactly. That suggests both sides stand an equal chance of winning.
When we use our superpowers in this film, it's much more an everyday occurrence. It's a sort of, you know, they are very comfortable using their powers, so we don't have a big, massive close-up shot of me going, so that I can, you know, mind bend you. It's just thrown away.
There were a few arguments for the studio when they were like, no, people see superhero films because they want to see the explosions and the flying and the capes and all. I was like, no, they don't anymore. We've had it for too long, and it's becoming generic and boring. And I want to do something different where it's very matter of fact that they have a power. It's not, it's just reality. Like, if someone breathes, they can fly.
He had a vision that was not your run-of-the-mill, comic book movie.
So your mutation is what? You're super smart?
I'll say. Hank here graduated Harvard at the age of 15.
I wish that's all it was.
You're among friends now, Hank. You can show off.
Sorry.
Yep. Ta-da!
You're amazing.
It is kind of a thinking person's action film in the sense that, you know, I think you could take the action sequences out of the film and you could watch it as a drama and still be very intrigued as to what's going on around you. But the plus side is you get these very cool sequences thrown in there as well.
When the wings are tattooed on my body, that was real. It took about 2 hours every day, and I would sit there and they would, you know, put these incredible wings on my back, which was really cool. And then when they unfurl and come out, that is all CGI. And they had me in a harness, which was very tight and painful after a while. And then they would, just kind of zoom me around the set. You know, I had to work out a bunch and get really strong because you have to be able to manipulate your body being suspended in the air, which is crazy. And then they make it look cool later.
The thing is, it's really difficult when you've got a tail that's not there. But it's quite weird because you're sort of, say I'm looking at the camera now and I'm looking at the camera and then my tail comes into the shot and you don't know whether to do that, to go and sort of look at it. Because if you had a tail, you wouldn't look at it. You know, it's like you don't look at your hand when you're doing that. But so Matt would go, tail, Fleming, you want to look at it? And I say, I'm not going to look at it because I've got a tail. I know I've got a tail. I don't need to look at it. So there were debates about tail politics.
There were a lot of times when there was no green screen at all, you know, that we would just shoot the scene and then they would add the effects later, and I didn't really have to worry about it. In fact, John Dykstra, who's the effects coordinator, is an absolute genius. And he would kind of talk to me about the way things were going to end up looking, and would ask me my opinion vis-a-vis my character in terms of how I would absorb energy, for instance, you know. And it was great to be collaborative in that way because, you know, it's very easy in these kinds of films to sort of start to feel like a puppet. And the challenge is to try to hold on to some semblance of performance.
I had no idea that big budget movie making is a very different discipline. I mean, there were times I didn't think I'd get the movie finished, but at the same time, it got me out of my comfort zone, really got me out of my comfort zone, which was good.
Full credit to Matthew. I think he has made what we were all hoping for, which is an entertaining ride with a lot of interesting social comments within that and interesting philosophies. It's 2 hours, 12 minutes, and I didn't feel that time pass. I was totally engaged throughout the film, so yeah, very happy. Very lucky, very grateful.